Hello, Internet. I'm Jackie Fox, the host of the Politically Non-Binary show and podcast, in addition to many others. Today, we're going to be covering the news you might have missed as we look through the ground blind spot report for the month of July. And boy, it was a doozy. So, what we're doing here is showing you the headlines that you might have missed depending on your particular political affiliation. What are the right-wing sources hiding from you, or what do they just not consider worthy of being newsworthy? And what is the left hiding from you? So first, being hidden from the right is Donald Trump's former press secretary says she saw Trump showing classified documents to Mar-a-Lago guests. Out of all the people that covered this, only 19% of them were right-wing sources. Stephanie Grisham, a former top spokesperson for Donald Trump, stated that the former president showed no understanding of the importance of protecting classified information while in office. Grisham revealed that she witnessed Trump displaying classified documents to individuals at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, showing a disregard for the sensitive nature of such information. I'm kind of speechless on this one because it's like, how do you even deny that this is a thing when it has happened? So, like, this isn't even the only way that we know this is true. Just give up. We know he did this. If anything, like, I don't know, try to spin it. And some are, admittedly, by trying to play this weird game of Donald Trump is too stupid to know he was committing a crime, and that's why we should elect him president again. Which doesn't really make sense to me. But moving on, let's see what the left is hiding from us. Biden has a profane temper behind closed doors, according to an Axios report. President Joe Biden reportedly has a shortened temper and often curses at officials in his administration behind the scenes. Wow. I feel like we're re-entering the Victorian era. Like, what the fuck is this? How is this news? We have news of so many horrendous and buffoonish crimes that Donald Trump has committed over the last several years, and these are all coming to a head with 3 consecutive, at this point, convictions. Arraignments? I don't know. I forget the word. But, you know, he's been charged 3 times at this point, and multiple charges in many of these cases. And the big headline for the right-wing news is that Joe Biden cusses at people behind the scenes. Like, wow. Wow, who gives a fuck? Man, I assume that every president does this. I would be a little bit weirded out to find out that a president didn't do this. I mean, like, there is probably a level to which if Axios thought that this was newsworthy, it may go a little bit above and beyond what I would consider to be okay. But, like, you know, because there was a very reasonable and I think well-deserved controversy about Amy Klobuchar and the way that she treated her employees and her staffers during her service as a politician. And certainly that can be a mark on a president's character, but I don't know. Does it really make headlines that Joe Biden says dirty words behind closed doors? I mean, come on. It's not like he said he was raping people regularly and, you know, getting away with it on a hot mic or something. Like this, I applaud the left for not covering this. This is fucking boring. For the right, what is the right missing out on? Climate activists plug up holes in golf courses across Spain amid massive drought. I just want you to hear the numbers involved for this, right? Extinction Rebellion claims that golf in Spain consumes more water than the cities of Barcelona and Madrid combined. According to the group, one golf hole requires over 22,000 gallons of water a day for maintenance, exacerbating ongoing drought conditions within the country. So let's just take 22,000, multiply that by 18, and we're already like 2/5 of the way to 1,000,000 gallons of water. It only takes like 3 days to burn over 1,000,000 gallons of water on a single Spanish golf course. According to these numbers. So like, wow, no, it really does sound like that could be the thing. Also, like, the left-wing coverage of this wasn't very extensive either. There were a couple of people who talked about this, but like, not a lot. A lot of the coverage of this is actually coming from the quote-unquote center, which is interesting. Just like news channels, even like some local news channels. This is nobody's taken that one seriously, even though that is a staggering claim. Big claim if true, and absolutely the government should spend water usage at golf courses in times of drought. If you're good at, like, we do so many things to people's fucking yards. Fuck the whole sport of golf. Fuck anything that requires that much land to operate during a drought specifically. If we're having good times and there aren't water shortages, yeah, you can play golf on your manicured fields, but I don't know. Have you heard of AstroTurf? Like, I know it's not as glamorous, but like, fucking try it. I'm sorry. Like, we've got to figure out something that's actually going to work, because this isn't doing it. So what's the left missing out on earlier last month? University consider new rankings to skirt SCOTUS ruling on race-based admissions. Recently, at least 40 higher education institutions have requested more information on the University of California, UC Davis School of Medicine Socioeconomic Disadvantage Scale, or SED, which considers a student's socioeconomic background, such as their parents' income and whether or not they come from an underserved area, in addition to academics, according to the New York Times. And honestly, like, this, I don't get why the oh my gracious. So the right is obviously all sorts have been out of shape about this. This is obviously an issue that really gets to them, where I think most liberals would probably hear this and say, oh, okay, cool. Sure. Especially because, like, this does seem like a good evolution from the more blunt and racially determined strategies of affirmative action, which, while they weren't a bad thing or doing a disservice to this country, they were due for a little bit of updating. And I think that this just does it better from what I've heard about it. I'm not like extensively aware of it, but you know, the left could cover this a bit more. Good grief. Only 2 sources. I mean, it's not that a lot of people covered this, but only 2 sources. And yeah, okay. So, but also, again, this is a thing that really only the right has been super concerned. Like, you know, when was the last time you heard a liberal say affirmative action, right? But conservatives have been talking up and down about it for a very long time. What is the right missing out on? Men are hunters, women are gatherers. That was the assumption. A new study upends it. Nice, good title writing there. A new study challenges the long-held stereotype that men were primarily hunters in foraging societies, finding that women were actively involved in hunting large game in a majority of societies. Wow. And yeah, I'd heard about this. This is actually a really fun news story and really fun study, and just an update to the history and herstory of the human race. Because, you know, this type of misunderstanding of our own history has led to a lot of, I mean, this really underpins sexism, doesn't it? That there's a quote unquote natural order that we are defying by doing certain things, when really what we are reverting to is the natural order, is that so many of these things that have been denied for so long and forced aside through things like gender have been in fact unnatural, and that the natural order is far more diverse and interesting than that. This is another one, though, that got covered mostly by the center. There aren't a lot of left-wing sources that covered this. It was just kind of overwhelmingly local news. What's the left missing out on? California Reparations Task Force calls for termination of child support interest debt for black parents. I don't know. The California Reparations Task Force made and back child support debt for black residents of the state. I mean, who does the interest go to? I'm actually, like, the right is getting bent out of shape about reparations. Okay, so I went to one of the fucking support conservative journalism. Eat my asshole. So you just heard what this is about, right? And this dipshit from the New York Post, which is, I mean, at least it was formerly a tabloid. I guess it's still about as factual as a tabloid, especially if this is the fucking title. Because you remember, like, it was very specific. Let me just read this. Elimination of interest on past due child support and back child support debt. Interest. Here's the title. Reparations should include no child support payments for black fathers. No fucking way. You're just making shit up, Brandon Gillespie from New York Post. How are you a fucking journalist if you just lie straight off the bat like that? Even as you say the exact same thing that I just read, like, your headline is just fucking lies. I mean, I'm sure that there are all sorts of systemic forms of debt, forms of penalization of poverty and such things that have disproportionately affected the black community, that I wouldn't be surprised that this is really fucking with people. The thing I'm curious about is, like, who does that interest go to? Because if it's to the mother, then I have mixed feelings about this. But if it's like a fee paid to the state, nah, fuck the state. Quit profiting off of people's poverty and other people's pain. Like, I get the idea of paying interest to the mother. Like, shit, I was 3 months late, so here's a little extra. That makes sense to me. But if this is just like debt that's being paid to the government or something, as a penalty, as a fee, as a thing you have to go to court for, some sort of bullshit, which also probably incurs its own fees. If it's something like that, then I'm certainly in support of this. This is a great way to do reparations. But here's the thing. All of the sources for this are dog shit. Absolute fucking dog shit. I mean, the furthest left of these I just read from Hot Air, which was directly quoting the New York Post, and both of those were lying dog shit that didn't really explain any of those details to any satisfaction, which is why we need a left-wing source talking about this. There's a lot of really interesting things about reparations coming out of California right now that I have only heard about from right-wingers because, I mean, it feels like white people in every other state are just watching this story like, nothing to see here, folks. Whoop-a-da-da-da-da-da. We're not gonna vote for anything like that here, so let's just not talk about it. Our black people won't get reparations, but it's good that California's doing it. Yeah, that feels like the whole fucking liberal attitude for the rest of the country, and I think it's pretty representative of that there's nobody really cheering this on, and that it's all people just getting fucking pissed about it for absolutely no goddamn reason. It's fucking stupid. Moving on to July 18th, the week of July 18th, 25th. I guess we'll do August 1st too in this episode. Alright, so July 18th. What is the right missing out on? Scientists designate Canadian Lake as ground zero for the Anthropocene, Earth's new epoch. Scientists say that Crawford Lake in California is a potential marker for the start of the Anthropocene era due to clear evidence of human activity found in its layers of sediment, including nuclear fallout, pollution, and rising temperatures. Only 9% right coverage. Once again, mostly middle, which is largely either news distributors, like, say, this is the Reuters logo, and then you're seeing like a lot of local news. NPR did cover it, which was good on them, so it probably got a lot of headway that way. But it is largely center coverage. What's the left missing out on? Redoubling support for Ukraine, single best way to aid global economy, says U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. So, I mean, there is more to this than just selling weapons is good for the economy, so we should do it. Especially considering that, like, recently we saw Russia redoubling attacks on grain infrastructure and grain supplies within Ukraine, who is a global distributor, especially to like African countries and such. And there are a lot of large global economic impacts of Ukraine not being able to fend things like that. And we will, not America, but the world will be seeing dire economic fallout from that attack alone. And that was weeks ago. I'm sure even more things, and there are even more dire ripples of economic destruction that radiate from this war and from Russia's actions largely. But of course, the Treasury Secretary wants to support the military-industrial complex, largely based out of fucking Virginia, because, you know, they all just want to move closer to the people they lobby, the Pentagon and Congress. So, here we are. What's the right missing out on? Florida now has the highest inflation rate in the United States. Oh, get wrecked, DeSantis. Go fuck yourself. The growing population in Florida has contributed to the increase in inflation, particularly through higher housing costs. Fun stuff. What's the left missing out on? Chicago's suburbs starts making $25,000 reparations payouts in test run for the whole country. See, like, this is what I'm talking about, man. The left is, like, sleeping on all the reparations stuff that's happening. I didn't even realize it was happening in Chicago, too. Like, this is awesome. I remember first learning about reparations when I was, or the idea of reparations when I was, I don't know, like a kid, like early teens or something. And, you know, I thought my mom always encouraged, like, me to learn more about Martin Luther King. She was one of those types of liberals, at least. I mean, she still kind of is, but like at least then. But like when I came to her with the idea of reparations, she was just so. It wasn't necessarily that she was against the idea, but she was unwilling to consider it because she thought it was a political impossibility at the very least, right? And we see now places actually fucking doing it, and like to more and more meaningful degrees. And crickets from the left about it, which is weird. Like, I feel like in making this, I have to make an episode on modern day reparations because I think that this is really interesting. And the only people talking about it are on the right. Like, I hear about this from people I know who have more right-wing sources. And again, like, the left just isn't talking about it. So let's get some more details here. The City Council of Evanston, Illinois is paying reparations to black residents to address a history of housing discrimination and wealth and opportunity gaps experienced between 1919 and 1969, which is also not a period of time that people often talk about when they talk about the context of reparations. I think it's a perfectly valid time to give reparations for, and it also undercuts some of the arguments about like slavery was a long time ago. These people, the people the people that are alive today would be getting reparations, are so far removed from their slave ancestors that's not fair, or whatever. Completely discarding, generational wealth very much being a thing, and that their generational wealth was categorically stolen to prop up white families that held on to that and took advantage of that and got better opportunities for it. Even in a colorblind world, the money and power disadvantage differential that slavery created would have made black people second-class citizens, but we decided to double down with Jim Crow as well and redlining and all of this shit. So yeah, I think this is perfectly valid. The program aims to provide $25,000 to each of the 140 eligible residents, primarily elderly individuals, by the end of the year, using funds from marijuana and real estate transfer taxes. That's fucking brilliant. Because like black communities have been historically disadvantaged through marijuana law, and part of the thing that they're giving reparations for is housing discrimination. So estate transfer taxes, like, you are in effect having the wealthy, those who have the generational wealth that was probably taken from them to begin with, and that money is coming from those who have the generational wealth, who are passing it down, because we're talking about estates here, right? Those who are still passing down generational wealth, that is being redistributed to those who had it taken away from them. I just think that's beautiful. That's a really cool poetic justice that's happening there, and I kind of love it. Okay, what's the right missing out on? Outrage in Italy after court rules groping under 10 seconds is not illegal. The incident involved a 17-year-old student who reported being groped by a janitor in a Rome high school. The court acknowledged the violation but deemed the act to be a joke because it lasted only a few seconds. Well, that's fucking disgusting. That is incredibly fucking disgusting. What the fuck, Italy? What the actual fuck? I don't understand. Like, I mean, I think there should definitely, you should be able to bump into people or whatever. Like, intent is an important thing, but like, they're acknowledging that he groped her, but he didn't grope her long enough for it to be like, I don't know, how long does it take to honk a titty? You know what I mean? Because that feels like, how long does it take me to punch you in the testicles? Like, how long does it take me to punch you in the face? Because that punch to the face, can't be assault. It only lasted a couple seconds. It was a joke. I mean, we don't apply this kind of logic to other types of assault, is my point. Kind of fucked up. What's the left missing out on? Americans' confidence in higher education sinks to a new low, according to a Gallup poll. According to a Gallup poll, confidence in higher education has declined, with only 36% of Americans expressing a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in universities. I guess my trust in higher education actually has declined over the pandemic, just from a lot of the I don't know, it feels like another one of the it's hard to explain, but it feels like they're really cutting back in terms of quality and raising the prices. You know, they're one of those industries that's moving to more distance, more digital, more mass, less quality, less attention to students, and somehow simultaneously it costs more money. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And it was heavily exacerbated by the conditions of the pandemic, and it feels like every time students lose, it's no 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's all steps back, and there are never steps forward. So it always gets worse. So yes, my confidence in higher education is constantly eroding. Okay, so now we have moved on to the end of the month. We're July 25th. What's the right missing out on? According to a court, Florida violates Americans with Disabilities Act by institutionalizing disabled kids. Oh, shit. Who polices the entirety of Florida? What court is that? The court found that Florida placed some children at serious risk of unnecessary institutionalized and kept others unnecessarily institutionalized. Just another reason I would never be caught dead in fucking Florida. Florida, y'all fucking suck, man. Why y'all never in the news for good shit? Get in the news for good shit, you suckos. For the left, what's the left missing out on here? Hunter Biden's gallery sold his art to Democratic donor friend who Joe Biden named to a prestigious commission. Well, that does sound like some indirect pay for play. Elizabeth Hirsch Naftali, a real estate investor, published one of Hunter Biden's artworks, and she was appointed to the Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Overbroad after his first art opening. It's unclear when she bought the artwork or how much she paid for it. Okay. That sounds fucked. And once again, we see that the party in power is unwilling to police their own people while they're in office. You know, because, like, look, if this was a resistance story about, which one of the fail sons do I want to talk about? Let's go with Donnie Jr. If this was a story about Donnie Jr.'s potential cocaine addiction, there would be one right-wing source and like 40 left-wing sources. So, just saying. What's the right missing out on this week? Alabama Republicans refused to draw a second black congressional district in defiance of Supreme Court. Alabama's Republican-controlled legislature passed a new congressional map with only one majority black district, despite a court order calling for 2 majority black districts. I'd be really interested to know the details here. There are a lot of black folk in Alabama. It seems real fucked that they only have 1 or even 2 districts that they represent as a majority, considering how many of them are there. And any map with less than 2 absolutely sounds like gerrymandering. Like, this has to be a fucked up drawn map. What's the left missing out on this week? After Sweden, protesters burned Quran in front of Iraq embassy in Denmark. After Sweden, what? 2 protesters set fire to a copy of the Quran in front of the Iraqi embassy in Copenhagen, Denmark, risking a further deterioration of relations between the 2 countries. I'm missing some context here. I have no idea what they're talking about. Let's see, we've got high factual. We'll go for that high factuality. Bahrain summoned Sweden's charge d'affaires and handed her a formal protest letter against allowing the burning of a Quran in Stockholm, the state news agency said on Tuesday, citing the foreign ministry. Iraq's foreign ministry on Monday called authorities of EU countries to quickly reconsider so-called freedom of expression and right to demonstrate in light of Quran burnings. Turkey's foreign minister on Tuesday strongly commended the continuing attacks on the Quran, adding that the Danish authorities allowing these actions mean they do not see the severity of the results they can have. Turkey on Monday called on Denmark to take necessary measures to prevent this hate crime against Islam. Sorry, mate. Islam is not a person. I don't think you can commit a hate crime against it. You can commit a hate crime against an Islamic person, but not against the religion itself. Fuck Islam. I'm sorry. I don't specifically have anything necessarily against Islam. I'm not a fan of organized religions, and more holy books should get burnt more often, in my opinion. And I say that without wanting to hurt a single person that those religions represent, except maybe the pedophile priests or the Taliban running Afghanistan and subjugating its people. Those guys piss me off to the point where I might hurt them, but that's different. And also, I'm not in an opportunity to hurt any of those people, so it's kind of irrelevant. Moving on. Yes, I think the right to freedom of expression, right to demonstrate should include right to burn holy books. Yeah, absolutely. For the right. What are they missing out on? Investigation launched after video shows Ohio police dogs attacking suspect with his hands up. All right. Oh man, on July 4th. The event unfolded on July 4th after law enforcement officers engaged in the pursuit of a semi-tractor trailer driven by 23-year-old Jadarius Rose. Welp, should have seen that coming. Fucking Ohio. The vehicle was missing a mud flap, and it had failed to stop for an inspection. A report from the Ohio State Highway Patrol said. You gonna attack a person with a dog because they're missing a fucking mud flap? Show me the law where that's okay, you sons of bitches. That one makes me personally mad. And also, this is one that there were a number of quote-unquote left-wing sources. I don't know what makes ABC6 more left-wing necessarily than News Channel 13. But it looks like a lot of this was center-oriented local news channels, so not super big. What's the left missing out on this week? United States cuts off funds to Wuhan Institute over COVID stonewalling. Holy shit. Wow, this the lab leak shit just gets more interesting every week. The U.S. government has cut future funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology after it failed to provide officials with documents pertaining to lab safety and security. Wow. I'm glad our government is finally starting to take the Wuhan lab seriously. And this is a great sign. What's the right missing out on the first week of August? Iran official in charge of promoting Islamic values suspended over alleged gay sex video. Hey babe, new ironic gay sex video just dropped. The head of culture and Islamic guidance in Gilan province, Iran, has been suspended following the release of a sex tape allegedly showing him engaging in homosexual activity. And look, I'm not shaming this guy for being gay or even for having a sex tape, but the hypocrisy here is pretty fucking hilarious, ain't it, boys? Well, apparently it wasn't very hilarious to the right because, well, only one right-wing source actually covered this at all. What's the left missing out on this week? Facebook scrubbed COVID posts under pressure from White House, according to a report. And so I looked into this one. This one was interesting. This comes from Jim Jordan, and it is being called the Facebook Files. And it is actually really similar to the Twitter Files, except that it's even more clear in this case. It seems that Facebook, while it did do things that make conservative people upset, it was not being coerced by the Biden administration, in that they sent them a quote-unquote list of demands, and Facebook did implement some of them, the ones that it agreed with. It also told them that it wouldn't do a lot of the other things. So, like, yes, there's a dialogue and a conversation between the government and Facebook, but there was not a demand. There was not coercion, as evidenced by them not getting all of their demands, or even most of them. So, I don't know. This is a big non-smoking gun. We all know that Facebook was removing COVID-related posts and posts that considered COVID misinformation. We all knew that it did that. We didn't know that the White House had asked it to do that necessarily directly, even though there had been some language moving in that direction from the president and the administration publicly, while these things were being said behind closed doors. But at the same time, like, I've seen posts removed because they said men are trash. So, like, where is the standard, Facebook? You know, like, I feel hard. They'll fucking cancel anything. They're the fucking, the most whitewashed fucking social media service. Unless you're talking about doing violence against women, that is perfectly okay. Violence against men, though, saying men are trash, that's not cool. Yep. All reasons I haven't used Facebook in a very long time. What's the right missing out on? Florida allows conservative PragerU curriculum to be in public schools. Decision up to school districts. The Florida Department of Education reviewed PragerU's kids' material and determined that they align with the state's revised civics and government standards. However, it's up to individual school districts to decide whether or not to use the supplemental materials. This is absolutely fucking disgusting. PragerU is a propaganda outfit funded by oil billionaires and fronted by Dennis Prager. It's called PragerU because it can't actually call itself Prager University because it's not an accredited school, nor does it intend to teach anyone. It intends to propagandize and misunderstand the very topics that it intends to speak about. Like, there is a whole cottage industry. There are many YouTube channels that have been launched in taking the time to work through the wordplay and gamesmanship of a short PragerU video, and how many times they misrepresent history so casually and intentionally. And often the misreading of history is actually so incredibly bad that it just has to be intentional. This is definitely the most propagandistic outfit that exists, that really like exists within popular culture and on YouTube specifically, and it's pretty fucking disgusting. The PragerU kids material, which is available on YouTube and is especially disgusting, is stuff that you can actually, I think it was Big Joel reviewed like a bunch of them, and really gets into why they are abhorrent fucking garbage. And just the idea that it would be okay to show those in schools, that could be like normalized and given the the platform and the validation of being used as educational materials is absolutely disgusting. But it is along the lines of Florida also deciding that, you know, the way they should be teaching African American history is to say that slaves were being taught job skills. The thing about job skills is that, you know, if you're a slave, you were incapable of getting a job, because a job is a thing that a free man does to earn an income, and that's not the way slavery works. So job skills for slaves are pretty fucking irrelevant. Just another God. Florida dunks on themselves. I can't believe anybody would take any of them seriously. What's the left missing out on? South American political leader calls for violence against white citizens at rally. Kill the Boer, the farmer. Julius Malema, the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party in South Africa, led radically violent chants at a rally, singing the genocidal anti-apartheid struggle song, Kill the Boer, the Farmer, which targets white descendants of Dutch settlers. So, it's not necessarily just white citizens, but specifically the colonizers and oppressors. And this also speaks to, like, and this feels like a growing global trend. This feels like the kind of door that the legitimization and normalization of a large country having a president like Donald Trump. And unfortunately, while the UK had Boris Johnson, just legitimizing crazy hair and stupidity in the highest levels of power. But the kind of the world fascism and violence and supremacy that this engendered is even reaching out to this, like, just the political language in general that's being used is running hot. Of course, you could also see this as a natural reaction to the world heating up, in that, you know, it's often like there's a certain level of like heat rage when temperatures go up. People can get more violent and erratic. Our brains start to boil and we just go a little bit crazy. So maybe we'll be seeing more of this as the world begins to burn. What's the right missing out on this week? According to Jerome Powell, the Fed is no longer forecasting a U.S. recession. Okay. This feels like a George Bush-style mission accomplished moment where they pat themselves on the back and go straight back to ruining the economy. But Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell announced that the central bank staff are no longer predicting a recession in the United States due to the resilience of the economy. We did it, folks. And it might actually even get better from here, given that a lot of the things that have been done by people like Joe Biden for this country to ease inflation moving forward, such as the Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of the benefits of that were long-term benefits, or benefits that wouldn't be seen immediately, or they would compound over time. And we're still within too short of a window to have seen a lot of those. So there are going to be a number of factors that could push this even more positive into the future. What's the left missing out on this week? High school boys are trending conservative. I've heard this one a couple of times recently about the younger generations, but according to a federal survey, 12th grade boys in the U.S. are almost twice as likely to identify as conservative compared to liberal. The thing that I find interesting about this, though, is that I think in general, women at most age groups are more likely to are trending kind of like equally towards liberalism, if not more so. Which means that, like, overall, if you don't, for instance, value the votes of boys and men over the votes of boys of girls and women, then we're still trending more liberal than conservative in general. So that's the news that you might have missed for the month of July 2023. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast or to the YouTube channel that you are watching right now. Appreciate having you here. Be sure to check that link in the description. It's going to lead you to all of the other vestiges of the Jackie Fox Media Empire, including we got a new episode of Fox Talks After Dark podcast up today. That's going to be on how I learned to quit worrying about orgasms and enjoy the ride. But many other things can be found. In addition to ways to donate to the channel, if that's the kind of thing that you would like to do, I would like to see you do it. So I will see you in next month's video or podcast about the news that you missed. And I'm thinking that I might also do the off the wall news too. Some of that was pretty fun and pretty funny, and I think I'd have some fun with it. So if you'd like to see that, be sure to comment about it in the description. If you would like to hear more about any one of these stories or the trends here, then tell me about it. But for now, be sure to like whatever you were viewing this on. Give it a like. Just hit the button. I'll wait. Just do it. Just hit the button. Have you done it? I think you have. Good. That's great. And subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch you in the next one. See ya. And don't forget to check your blind spot.